Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking, a podcast focused on animal health and pet care, bringing attention to some of the most pressing and critical issues facing the industry today. I'm happy to have with me today Frank DeCecco, founder of DVM6, a televet solution aimed at providing relief to our overworked veterinarians in practice today. Frank, thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely great to be here, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah. Frank and I had a chance to meet up at Western Vet a few weeks ago. And Frank, maybe you want to kind of fill everybody in kind of where you're at in the process of DVM6, what what spurred you to
went into practice in the Army, actually. I learned about military working dogs my first year in vet school, and I thought that was amazing. And so I followed that passion into the military, and I did about 10 years of military service in the veterinary corps, and went a lot of places and did a lot of things that I would not have an opportunity to do elsewhere. But the foundational job was running a vet clinic. And so did a lot of the things any typical vet clinic owner would do. In addition to the medicine and the surgery, there was the business side and staffing and inventory and those sort of things. Got out of the military at the end of 2017, and I have always been interested in furthering my knowledge and becoming a better practitioner of vet med. And so I looked at specialty medicine, and I applied for and was able to complete a specialty internship in internal medicine at a very high-speed emergency practice in Tacoma, Washington. And from there, went on and did ER work during the beginning of the pandemic, which was its own thing. And I kind of saw how bad things were in a lot of private practices. I transitioned to doing locum work, which is essentially being a relief doctor and hiring yourself out as an independent contractor to different practices who need help. First thing I realized was almost every practice was short doctors because the demand was very strong. And I saw a lot of the problems being repeated over and over from clinic to clinic in different states, in different kind of demographic areas, depending on the clientele they were serving. But everyone was kind of dealing with the same issue of being understaffed. And this was at the beginning of the pandemic. I've done relief work for several years, even before that, and the problems were there, but you only noticed it kind of. I had an outside perspective. A lot of times people get blindness to what's going on in their jobs because they're in it every day and they're kind of used to it, if you will. So they don't see the stressors that are there or the inefficiencies. But when you come in from an outside perspective into a practice, you have no emotional attachment to anything that's going on there. You can see it from a very clinical, if you will, perspective of being dispassionate, and you can see the problems for what they are. And I kept seeing the same problems over and over and over in various practices, and a lot of it boiled down to staffing. And too few people were being asked to do too much too regularly, and people were just getting burnt out. You can be resilient, you can do self-care, and those things are super important. But if you keep putting yourself into an environment that is unsustainable, your self-care and resilience will lose 100% of the time. The systemic change has to happen at a much higher level than the individual to make it an environment that people can thrive in. So in 2021, I was contacted by people I knew from the military who were now on the civilian side to go overseas and do a veterinary job. So I was out of the country for 21 and 22, doing veterinary work at a U.S. embassy overseas, and it gave me distance and perspective. Obviously, I was still in contact with all of my colleagues and my network of friends in veterinary medicine, and I watched how, as during the height of the pandemic, where more and more people were adopting pets and more people were home watching their pets all day, and seeing things that were giving them questions and wanting to talk to a veterinarian about it, that all of a sudden the supply demand mismatch that had been a bad thing became an absolutely critical thing, where people couldn't get in, and your pet was vomiting and you couldn't get in to see a vet for 3 weeks, and things of this nature that are not good for the pet, which is, that's what my oath is to. My oath is to the animal, to take care of them. But also then you've got the pet parent, who's made a bond with this animal, and you're failing them. And then worst of all, you're failing the clinical staff, your veterinarians, your veterinary technicians, all the people that work in the clinic are trying to, see 14 people when they've got 5 slots. And so people in vet med are by and large very kind-hearted, very empathetic, willing to do anything to help animals, and that leads to them overextending themselves time and time again. And like I said earlier, it's just not sustainable. So as things rolled on the past couple of years, more and more people have burnt out, more and more people have gotten compassion fatigue and are unable to do the clinical job anymore, and they've walked away from the profession. So we've lost good people, experienced people, and the demand continues to rise. Pet ownership continues to increase. Demand for vet services continues to increase. So all there is a yawning gap in what our clients want and need and what we can provide. And so I was racking my brains trying to figure out what is an answer to this. How does this problem get solved? Because it's not going to get solved with staffing. The veterinarians in the pipeline through vet schools, there's a set number that graduate every year. So we've got new graduates coming in, but we have an aging boomer generation population that are retiring at twice the rate that new veterinarians are coming out. So we know that we're not going to replace the vets we need with new grads. We know we're not going to replace the vet techs we need, because we're not providing pay, benefits, working conditions to attract people into the profession and to stay in the profession. So we have to come at it from a different angle. We have to look at different ways to solve this problem. And for me, the idea was, there are so many appointments, and depending on the clinic, it's at least 10%. It can be as much as 20% of the appointments that a general practitioner sees every day are things the pet does not need to be in the room for. It's dealing with a chronic condition that is static or unchanging, like arthritis that's being well managed. It's consultations about nutrition, what diet to feed. I want to feed raw. I want to home cook my diet. What are the questions? What are the serious things you need to talk to the owner about to get them to understand what that really means? I've got behavior issues with my dog. These kind of things are conversations, very important conversations between the veterinarian and the pet parent. But we can accomplish it in this way, the way I'm talking to you right now. It doesn't involve someone, caging up their cat that hates getting in the carrier and driving across town and finding parking and doing it at a time you can actually get to the vet when they're open, because you have responsibilities in your life as well. And then having this conversation where you're stressed out and the vet's got 3 minutes to talk to you because they got to get to 2 other exam rooms that they're already behind. And so telemedicine, telehealth, teletriage, 3 different things all under the same umbrella, are ways to alleviate the pressure on scheduling within the vet clinic. So telehealth is giving general information. Oh, your cat's been diagnosed with diabetes. Let me tell you what that means. Let me tell you about the treatments. Let me tell you about the time course of the disease and what you can expect, and the monitoring that's important, and all the information you need. That's a conversation that once a pet has been diagnosed in a vet clinic, that's an extensive conversation that the owner needs to be present for, and to do it when they're on their couch with a notebook is 1,000 times better than trying to do it in an exam room, where research shows us that people only get 20% of what we say in the consult room anyway. They don't retain it as soon as they walk out the door. Even if you give a great explanation of a disease or a treatment or a medication in an exam room, it doesn't stick. So you need to get the owner at a time and a place where they're able to absorb the information better, and that's at home, when they're comfortable and have the time blocked out to listen. And so for that kind of thing, it's super important to leverage technology. And so that's what we do at DVM6. We provide telemedicine solutions that can be, like I said, telehealth, which is just a generic talking about a disease process. It can be teletriage, which is, hey, I'm seeing my pet do this weird thing. Is it an emergency? Is it urgent? Should I just monitor at home? What do I look for? What are the important signs? Being able to give pet parents that information from a qualified resource is so important, because we're human, and we've gotten to the point of leaning on our technology such that we know how to ask the internet questions. And Dr. Google has been very busy the last few years, and now there's AI, which is a separate conversation. I think it's a fantastic thing, but like most fantastic things, needs a lot of left and right limits to understand how to use it, especially when it comes to science and medicine.
It's just going to recycle what it hears, and there's nobody to interpret it. And
there is no sanity check. There is no honesty check. It's chatting with you, right? It's creating words that fit the word bubble of what you're talking about. It may be 100% lies, but it can also be really great as far as a efficiency tool within VetMed. And so we do use it within constraints to have prepped answers for text questions that are routine. And we've vetted those answers, pun intended, but we've looked at the information that it spits out and see that it's correct and accurate, and feel okay passing that on. So that's just a time saver for certain things that are very routine within the business. And then there's telemedicine, which is the third and I think the most important kind of leg of the stool. And that's where we do what we're doing now. I get on a video call with a pet parent. They've got a diagnosis. My vet said my dog has Addison's, and I got to give it pills, but I don't know what's going on. And I did an internet search and Okay, let's talk about steroid production. Let's talk about the possibility of something called an Addisonian crisis, which is a life-threatening situation. Let's talk about the medications you're giving your pet and what those side effects are. So having specific information about a specific pet and being able to dive into the medical record and see all the information that the vet would see if you were in the exam room, right? So that is the piece of telemedicine that I feel is so crucial. I think it's the crux of making it work for us as a profession, and I think it's the thing they're swinging and missing at with a lot of the applications that exist in the marketplace that go directly to the pet owner, because they avoid this sticky wicket of getting into the medical record and looking at exactly what your pet's being diagnosed with, looking at those diagnostic test results, the lab tests, the prescriptions you've been given, the medical notes your vet has written. Without that piece, you can't really doctor. Okay, I can't give you medical advice about your pet without looking at the medical record. So just like when I was a relief doc and I came into a clinic that I've never been in before, but I've been hired as a contractor for a couple of days or a week to fill in for someone, I pull up the medical record. I see, oh, okay, 2 years ago this happened, and last year this happened, and 6 months ago, okay, we ran this test, and here's what the results are. Got it. So now I'm ready to go and do my job as a professional within the left and right limits of what's legal, ethical, moral for my profession. We're a highly regulated industry, and
so
I think it's important.
Get around VCPR, Frank, because you're within this model, this telemedicine model, you are then hired as a relief vet in a telemedicine capacity, and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, VCPR is super important. Veterinarian Client Patient Relationship. It's the fundamental thing that allows doctoring to happen. There has to be a relationship between the doctor, the pet parent, and the patient that's been initiated in a way that is legal. And so there's federal law, Code of Federal Regulations, that states how veterinary medicine can operate, and then states have their own codes underneath that. Most states do have their own veterinary regulations. Some states do not. Those states that do not, it defaults back to the federal, but they all boil down to basically the same thing. And they all say you can't establish this relationship remotely. Okay, so what does that mean for telemedicine? Well, it's a big deal. So the only way to do it is to partner with the vet clinic that has that relationship existing. You're looking at the records. The veterinary records have gone from when I started a long time ago, 15 years in practice, right? So back in the days of paper records, and electronic medical records were just beginning to be a thing. But we've evolved to the point where there are fantastic cloud-based EMRs and PIMs that exist that I can log into a medical record from anywhere. And once that happened, I mean, initially it was remote desktop VPN into many of the systems, and then it became cloud. And I think as we move forward, everything's going to be cloud-based as far as veterinary medical record keeping. But either of those, a remote desktop or a cloud-based, if I am hired by a practice, then it's the same as physically being there, because I can log into the system, I can look at the medical record, I can be educated on what's happened with this pet, and I can speak professionally to the pet parent about what's going on. So it's not getting around the VCPR, it's supporting the VCPR and its importance. There are certainly apps out there, kind of direct to consumer. Hey, sign up with us, for a monthly subscription, and you can talk to a vet anytime. Fine. We'll get you refills on your prescriptions, which is what they really want in the first place, because they want that revenue. But they don't have the medical record. They don't have partnership with your primary care veterinarian, and they don't want that, frankly. It's extra work. They want the recurring revenue of chronic medication refills. And the app to chat with somebody is kind of what they do to get there.
Would you say most of those are focused more on teletriage and telehealth then, and aren't really venturing into the telemedicine space?
Exactly. It's all telehealth, because they can only talk in very broad, generic terms about things. They can't speak to your pet individually because they don't have a VCPR. And so, yeah, they can do teletriage to a certain extent, and they can do telehealth, but they can't do telemedicine.
And that you're the big differentiator, you would say, with DVM6?
I think the differentiator is improving the health of the pet, and I feel like you can't do that unless you've partnered with the primary care veterinarian. You have to go through the existing relationship. You have to be on board with that plan is. So, there's medicine is called practice, right? We're given an education. We're given the ability to practice by passing licensing examinations. But once you get out there and have a license, you practice as you practice, and not every doctor practices the same. And second opinions are important, right? So it's not cookie cutter. It's not algorithm. Most, virtually all veterinarians that I meet and deal with practice what's called evidence-based medicine, which means we're looking at research that has been conducted and findings that have been verified by peer review. So when I say, I've seen your pet, and here are the diagnostic results, and here's what I've diagnosed as the disease, and here's the treatment plan, it's not because I think it's a good idea. It's because I've got the data. Yeah. So when an individual tries to do telehealth, they're talking at a very, very high level, and I think that not that they're giving bad information necessarily, but just like all people are individuals, all pets are individuals, and every dog doesn't respond the same, and every cat doesn't respond the same to a course of treatment or a dose of a medication. So you need to have the information in the medical record to be intelligent and to doctor and to talk clinically about a situation. There's more than one answer to every question in vet med, and a lot of it is informed by the practitioner's experience, and a lot of it's informed by new research, because every month there's a new magazine that hits my desk. Yeah, I still get the print edition because the AVMA, our body likes to send out the magazine, but obviously digital is better and faster for getting this information out there. But all the time, new research is uncovering answers, right? And we've kind of seen it in real time with COVID, how guidance has changed multiple times, right, since the beginning, because we're trying to figure something out, and people, the general population is being exposed to how science and medicine works. The best answer isn't always the first answer, and things do change over time. I went to med school in the mid-aughts, right? And I had professors who would tell me, 10 years after you get out, half of this won't be true. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because we were learning the fundamental important stuff, and like, not like anatomy and physiology is going to change. That stuff is pretty hard coded. Femur is going to be a femur forever, at least for the next million years, right? But the methodologies to fix a femur fracture are going to change as technology improves. When I was in school, there was no such thing as 3D printing, right? So just looking at that advancement, how that's changed orthopedic surgery in a huge way. So it's the same with medications. There's new medications being put out on the market constantly, and so to take the learning that I knew, not like the learning I got in school was wrong. It was the learning they had in 2008, right? And it was the best they had at that point. But if you ignore everything that goes on after that, you're not practicing what we call the standard of care, which is what is understood to be the right thing based on evidence. So it's something that to be a really quality veterinarian, to be a doctor in any field, you have to be current and you have to be informed. And again, to talk generally about a disease process, telehealth is fine. But to give you advice on your pet, I think telehealth it has a lot of holes, just because that information isn't there.
Right. It's better than nothing given the staffing shortages we're seeing, but it does sound like the better model would be through this contractual relationship where you're offering relief to a practice, you're helping to alleviate the burden that veterinarians are facing, but you're doing it in a way that you're augmenting and adding to the care that the pet is receiving, versus just being a stopgap. And not to say that hey, I get access to whisker docs through my pet insurance, and it's definitely been helpful. If my vet is closed and I need a quick opinion, I can call up and ask. That being said, would I prefer to have someone that knows Peenie's entire medical record, and I don't have to go back into my mind and say, well, she had this in this year and this in this year, and a lot of times, they're not going to get into that with me anyway. Frank, I'd be curious, how many practices have you seen sign up for DVM6? Are you seeing a lot of positive response in the market right now?
I've seen very varied response. VetMed is funny in that we're good at diagnosing, even in ourselves and in our practices. A few years ago, maybe 5-10 years ago, there would be, oh, don't be so soft. I had to work 12-hour shifts and overnights, and we didn't have enough techs, and blah blah blah. And so it was very much a, I suffered coming up, so you will too mentality. That's changed tremendously in the last 10 years. We recognize burnout as a problem across the profession. We recognize staffing ratios as being important. We do things ergonomically horrible in VetMed every day. We break ourselves, we break our technicians, because we do things to have them be more comfortable for our patients, but they're worse for us. And so these kind of things are there. But I find that as far as understanding telemedicine, understanding the importance, there's a secret. there's a dirty little secret in vet med, and I'm going to share it with you. We don't charge correctly for our services, primarily because our clients have to reach into their pocket and pay us. Veterinary pet insurance exists, and it's great, and I love it, and it's got like 10% penetration.
Like 2.5 to 3.
That's even worse.
It's catastrophically low. It baffles me.
So yeah. So what do we do as an industry, as a profession, where we want to care for the pet? Like, so what do? So you price yourself low. And the dirty little secret is veterinary clinics, businesses make virtually no money on veterinary services. They're basically break even. Okay. And the profit margin, the ability to stay in business for veterinary clinics comes from selling products. Okay. That's medications, that's preventatives, where the margin can be higher and they can actually be profitable and be what they call a going concern, right? The business can stay functional and pay their suppliers and pay their employees what they need to be paid, right? So if a vet clinic, right, is making its money and staying in business because it's able to price its medications at a place where it makes revenue, and then a third party comes along and becomes the refill outlet for medications, it's basically stealing the profitability from the vet clinic. What I do and what we do at DVM6 is like, hey, I'm here to help the vet clinic. I'm here to help the veterinarian and the vet technician who's busting their butt within the four walls of the clinic. I want to repatriate those dollars back to the vet clinic. Okay. So when I'm working with a clinic, what I often say to vet practice owners and practice managers is, the best thing about me from a business perspective is all my refills go back to your online pharmacy. And you get, and the clinic retains the revenue that's rightfully theirs. They've generated that through their work, through their exams, through their diagnostics, through their treatment plan. You know, to go through all that, which is basically break even, and then have another entity come and say, oh, we'll refill those meds and mail them to your house, which is entirely amazingly convenient, but it's shrinking the profitability of vet clinics. And that leads to the other problem in vet med, which is corporate consolidation and private equity, which is a whole other podcast, which I'm happy to to talk to you about. But you know, the independent vet clinic is slowly being killed off by private equity and corporate consolidation. And part of it is because these clinics can't maintain their profitability. They can't stay in business. You know, I don't want to lay it all on the feet of the Chewies of the world, but you know, these giant companies, you know, have seen where the revenue is, and they understand that, you know, yeah, our return on investment will be great if we can get refills of medications under our roof. So, you know, my pitch, if you will, my discussion with veterinarians is, I want to support your practice. I want to support your people. I want to support the pets you take care of, and I want to return money to you. You know, I want to make your business work for you, because there is no replacing a veterinary exam room. There is no replacing a hands-on physical exam for anything. There are certain virtual care providers who believe that skin and ears can be dealt with in a virtual way. I'm skeptical. There are too many variables in those disease processes to just look at something and know. That's not science. That's swag, right? Scientific wild ass guess. Because I know what it probably is. I know what it usually is. But there's a reason we do diagnostics, and it's not to run up your bill and make things more expensive. It's to help us differentiate the horses from the zebras, right? And so it's a medical school axiom that if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. Well, unless you're in the savannah of Africa, zebras exist, and things are not always what they look like. So that's why we test, because we want to have confidence in our diagnosis. And when we tell you your pet needs medications A, B, and C, I'm not doing that to run up my revenue. I'm doing that because that's what's scientifically indicated, to help them feel better and to cure what they have. It's often challenging to differentiate between the medicine and the business in vet med. And as a practice owner, as a business owner, one has to always be cognizant of that bottom line. But what drives that bottom line, what makes a vet clinic profitable, is practicing good medicine, practicing standard of care, and there's a gold standard, if you will, the best possible thing we could do. But there are other things that are good and above the standard of care. And I think that availing ourselves of that spectrum of choices to our clients allows us to remain our professional integrity and continue to help pets live better lives and longer lives, and support that human animal bond that's so important, that people have come to learn by spending more time with their pets the last 3 years, to see how important that bond is to our own mental health and happiness. So,
what's the most common form of pushback you get, when you're talking to a clinic? I see what, I think it's one of those things that until you're in it, you don't see just how stretched veterinarians are. Most people aren't aware of the suicide rate among the veterinary population. Most people, aren't aware that their vet is on average doing 50 and in some cases up to 80 hours a week. By the time they take care of your pets, they do their surgeries, they do their follow-up calls, they oversee the practice profitability, all of those things. And it's very easy, once you start to put yourself in those shoes, to see the level of burnout and the ill effects on mental health that veterinarians are dealing with. But at the same time, it sounds like there are concerns about asking for help in the form of a televet relief. What do you see, with people facing so much stress operating a practice? You think it would be very easy to see a solution like yours and jump on board, but what's the most common pushback you get in terms of people not adopting?
Yeah, that's a super important question. And I do want to put out a trigger warning. I'm going to talk about unaliving yourself for a moment, because you did mention it. So yeah, veterinarians are 3 times more likely to commit suicide. Female veterinarians are 4 times more likely, and the profession is majority female, and has been for 10, 15 years, and it's getting more so. And it's also true in our technician community. I am a veterinarian, and I'm also a military veteran, and both of those communities are highly affected by suicide. And it's barely a week goes by that something doesn't hit my feed on socials of a colleague who has ended their life. And I wonder why that is. Not that I don't understand the darkness and depression that can come with having a workload that is unsurmountable and caring so much about what you do. But I don't know that we're doing enough to fight it. Fantastic group called Not One More Vet. It has been in existence for a couple of years. Amazing support they're giving. I'd like to see the profession at large, and when I say the profession at large, I mean the AVMA, which is our lobbying body, if you will, be more involved. I feel like they're behind the trend on everything, and have been for quite a while. I'd like to see more change at that level. As far as the question of pushback, I think there's a couple of things that make it hard to embrace this model. The first is, as I kind of mentioned, the applications that are out there that go direct to consumer. They've been basically stealing their clients and profiting from them. and any advice they give is not part of the medical record. So if client A goes to some other party and gets information and advice on what to do with their pet, I don't know that next time I see them in the clinic. And so I might say something different or give them other opinions, which certainly would be justified by the science, but now they're hearing different things and they could be confused by that. So first off, it's the fact that a lot of the applications that exist go around the primary care vet, both from a medical standpoint as well as a business standpoint. And the other piece is just the fact that people work hard to maintain these relationships. If you hang out a shingle as a vet clinic and you build up a clientele, that is all blood, sweat, and tears. And to have a third party come in and say, hey, I want to be part of that relationship. I want to speak directly to your clients on your behalf, but still I'm a separate entity and in many ways an unknown entity. And I think that their experience with telemedicine has simply been adversarial. So it's a very slow educational process for us to explain that DVM6 is a partnership. And we want to build loyalty between the pet parent and the clinic they go to. I don't want their loyalty to me. I'm an adjunct. I am an extra service that you provide. You know what I mean? I'm available to answer questions after hours when you're closed. I'm available to go more in depth when you've got 75 callbacks to make at the end of the day. I can make some of those for you. And I'm here to lighten your load. And so there's a certain amount of skepticism that sounds altruistic. That why would somebody do that? Why would somebody want to help me? Business is competition and market share, and you've got to beat the clinic across town, kind of thing. And in some ways that's true, but as a profession, we've got to come together, and I feel like the niche, the opening, in the market is for a telemedicine service that works with your primary care vet to support what they're doing, to give consistent medical advice to the pet parent that goes into the medical record. So when I talk to you about your dog, the next time you go into your clinic, all my notes will be in the record. That doesn't happen with any of the other services. And so it's education is the sticking point. It's getting people to understand the difference between DVM6 and what other applications in the telemedicine space can do or try to do. And quite frankly, it's finding the time to have that conversation, because all of my clients, all of my business connects are super busy people. They're the people who are working the 80 hours a week that you're talking about, and to carve out a niche of time to speak to them is challenging. And this conversation has to happen with every client I try to get and every clinic I talk to, and it's a slow process. And I'm okay with that speed. I want them to be comfortable and confident in that relationship with DVM6. But it also means that it's not a click and buy kind of thing. This is not the Amazon store. This is a deeper business relationship that takes time to cultivate, and it's often very challenging to find the time on the clinical side to build that relationship. And so that's what I'm working on the most. That's what I've been working on since the beginning of 23 is dedicating the time to have these in-depth conversations and to build deep connections to fewer clinics, as opposed to try to be very broad and spread myself out among many. We look at each relationship as being super important to us. So our growth, at least in the early phases, is slow in that regard. But as our message gets out there, word of mouth in the veterinary community is also very powerful. So everyone tells a friend in vet med, good, bad, or indifferent. There's all sorts of social media groups amongst our professionals. So word travels fast, and we're kindling the small fires right now to build something very big and very scalable going forward. But it's all relationship based, and it's all in getting clinics to understand that we are a partner of theirs, we are a service of theirs that they can offer their clients.
And I'm sure, part of the growth equation, as you reach scale, as those small fires grow to big fires, is the lifestyle opportunity that you could offer to vets who might see themselves thriving in a telemedicine type practice as opposed to running a clinic. When I was talking to Ruvet the other day, they said, a big focus of their model is allowing vets to operate in this contract relief model where they don't have to have the worry about running their own practice, and it gives them a much greater sense of work-life balance. And I can imagine that right now, if, and correct me if I'm wrong, Frank, but DVM6 is just you, but as you grow, you're going to need to bring on additional veterinarians, and maybe that work-life balance of a telemedicine type model is something that you can market to them.
Yeah, I mean, we're a team of two right now, and we're very corporate. We have a corporate uniform. It's tie-dyes and flannels, and I don't say that jokingly. It's because work-life integration is foundational for what we do and what we want to offer. So if I'm removing, if I'm a pressure release valve, on the pressure cooker that is a vet clinic, not only do I want the pet to get awesome care, I want the doc and the tech to leave when their shift's over. I want them to live the rest of their life. I want them to go on that hike. I want them to spend time with their family, because that's what we do on our side. Relief medicine, becoming a travel nurse in the human side, and relief veterinarian in my world has become incredibly popular the last couple of years. And we've seen a great spike in people leaving the day in, day out full time to work on their schedule. And so I know there's a huge population out there who wants flexibility in their schedule. Work from home has never really been an option for vet med. We've got talented people, certified registered veterinary technicians are troves of information, and doing teletriage is right in their wheelhouse. And, a lot of them hit a wall after being in the profession 8, 10, 12, 15 years. They're not getting paid what they're worth. They're not getting paid what they deserve. Their body is being broken by the job, and they leave. And they take their brain full of experience with them. And those are the people that we recruit as contractors. As our demand increases, we pick up more supply. And I haven't seen anywhere near a bottom in that supply. There are people who are qualified, credentialed, experienced, empathetic, who want to work from home, who want to have flexibility. And the more we can offer them good pay for what they do, which we do, the more they're loving the idea, and then they can stay in the game, and then that builds up what we can offer on the supply side. It's taking some of that brain drain back, and allowing these people to still be active in their profession in a way that suits them and their lives. Not everyone wants to be chained to running the clinic floor 50 hours a week. I mean, it's just.
Do you feel like that there is the potential that you could get a lot of these vets that left the profession with the onset of COVID and get them back in, through this telemedicine model?
I've seen great interest. So most of what I do is trying to inform vet clinics of the services we offer. But I also dedicate time to building up this bench, if you will, of talent. And I have seen great interest across the board in both veterinarians and veterinary technicians in doing this. We launched our website in the fall of 22. And at first, it was just going to be an indication of interest. Click here for more information, learn more, send us an email. And we built it out a little bit more. So now there's multiple tabs explaining what DVM6 is, DVM6.com. I'll throw that out there. And what I noticed early on was I was getting more responses from people looking for work than I was getting from clinics looking to hire us. So it immediately keyed me in that, yeah, people want to work in this environment. So I believe there's a very strong likelihood of bringing people back into the fold of practicing vet med and doing it on their terms and their time, and getting them back into the game. And that's what we need. I mean, how are we going to close the gap? We keep losing people. We've got to get some folks back.
What are the statistics say? We're going to need 41,000 new vets by 2030, and we're only graduating 2,600 a year out of U.S. veterinary colleges. So
exactly,
you do the math. That by my calculations, that leaves us about 30 some odd thousand short.
Exactly, and even more, even worse is, we're not addressing what our clients want. The knock on the military is they're always fighting the last war. And my knock on vet med is we're practicing like it's 40 years ago. We kind of grew up in a system where your pets came for annual exams unless there was something wrong. And that's kind of, we expected to see a pet once a year. If it was a pet that things went wrong with, maybe 2 or 3 times. But funny thing happened. New generations were born, right? Shocking. And they have different interests. They have different ways they want to get information. They have different ways they want to interact. And during the pandemic, maybe partially because of the pandemic, but also just because of the age of the generation, millennials became the largest percentage of pet ownership in America. And they don't want to do what the boomers wanted. They have a different need. They want more constant interaction with their healthcare providers. They want to do it on their time and their terms. They want to do it on the phone they hold in their hand. They don't want to talk to their vet once a year. They don't want to talk to their vet once a week if they have a question. And I think that's great, because I don't want them going to Dr. Google to figure stuff out. I want them to come to a place where they can find credentialed, experienced individuals to give them the information they need. And because of staffing, the vet clinic that they go to doesn't have the ability to support that. Some of the newer cloud-based veterinary electronic medical records have client-facing apps as part of them and have text messaging ability built in. It's like already there. Do they have the ability to support when people want to ask questions? Not so much. Can they do it after hours? Absolutely not. So, partnering with a service like ours is going to address the needs of this clientele that has a different demand on the system. The system was not built for those demands. And so without blowing up the entire way the vet med industry works at the clinical level, we have to fix things in a manner we can. And like you said, we're not gonna have enough vets. We don't have enough veterinary technicians. And anyone who's worked on a clinic floor, veterinary technicians can do an awesome job with no veterinarians around. Veterinarians drown without veterinary technicians. Okay, so the structure within a clinic, that ratio is entirely the amount of pets that can be seen in a clinic is entirely dependent on the ratio of technicians to doctors, because the veterinary technician is so important and so critical in delivering care and does so many things that the general population doesn't even see or know about. And those are the folks that we're actually losing even more of than we are on the doc side. So we have better numbers when it comes to, like you said, how many graduates we're going to have at a vet school versus how many we need through the growing pet population and the older generation of doctors retiring. But even if we had enough veterinarians, we don't have nearly enough technicians, and you still can't deliver care the way you need to without enough of them. And honestly, 2.5 to 1 or 3 to 1 are recommended ratios of technicians to doctors to make your clinic work efficiently and correctly. So if I need 3 times as many technicians as I do veterinarians, and I'm losing more of them, the Brackey study showed, how many of them want to leave. More than 30% want to leave in the next 2 years. That's pretty. 1 in 3 technicians want to leave the industry within 2 years. So what about that? That is in my mind a bigger problem, because they're integral to the functioning of a clinic.
And that's not something you can necessarily replace with telemedicine. That those aren't virtual services. Those aren't
No,
Stuff that
and
has to happen in the
that's
context of clinic and
exactly, and so those that have walked away from the clinic lifestyle because of the hours, because of the burnout, maybe because of toxic leadership. There's a little bit of that in our profession. Um, you know, did they stop loving animals? Did they stop having knowledge of veterinary anatomy and physiology? Did they stop understanding signs of disease? Of course not. Can they do teletriage? Absolutely. Do I want them to come to DVM6? Absolutely. And pay them right. You know what I mean? And so, that is the way ahead. In leveraging technology. It's having access to the medical record through the cloud. It's partnering with the practice owners and practice managers. It's delivering the service to the pet parents that they want and need and expect from veterinary medicine. And the end result, the end user, is the pet that's getting better care because the family is getting better information because we're available to give it to them. It's not that the primary care vet within the four walls of the clinic doesn't want to do that. They obviously do. It's just, there's so many hours in a day and so many calls to make and so many pets to see, and people can't do all the things within that time constraint. So you have to leverage technology to add on more time, and telemedicine allows that.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Frank, I know we're getting at time here, but I wanted to kind of throw out one last question. What's your biggest win with DVM6 so far? What's the thing that really keeps you going, and what are you most proud of with it to date?
I'm super excited to be a part of the veterinary entrepreneurship community. I've met some wonderful people who are doing startups in many different lanes, and all of them are amazing. There's dictation software that's come around. There's really great EMRs that pull things together. There's new products and services, and meeting the people who are trying to affect change is amazingly stimulating to me, both on an intellectual level, but also, like you said, on that passion level. There's a lot of people who care deeply about vet med and want to make it better, want to make it better for the pets, want to make it better for the people delivering the medicine to those pets. And that is my biggest win, is taking the leap from clinical full-time to entrepreneur full-time with some clinical work as I can. Is meeting the people at conferences like WVC, but also through many online forums, many angel investor meetings and incubators. I've been talking to everyone in the space, and it's really, it makes me very optimistic about where we're going as a profession when I see so many people dedicating so much time and energy to ways of making things better in vet med.
Awesome. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been a fantastic conversation. Everyone, thank you for joining Petworking. I'm Peter Kenseth with Maya Strategy Group, your host. And Frank, we will look forward to seeing the growth of DVM6 going forward. And hopefully we'll see you. I'll have a chance to talk to you on a clinical level and when you're providing relief services for my clinic here in Vermont.
Oh, absolutely looking forward to that, Peter. Good talking to you.
Thank you.